Mary Shurkinski is battling stage 3 ovarian cancer. And due to a drug shortage, her fight is even more painful. At her last chemotherapy treatment, the Florida clinic ran out of the drugs she needed. She says she was sent home.
Why didn't anybody tell me this?
The United States has been grappling with a serious nationwide drug shortage. Last May, nearly 300 medications were in short supply, including critical care drugs used to treat cancer. And not only are we dealing with the worst drug shortage in over a decade, these shortages are taking longer to resolve.
Experts say the majority of the shortages are linked to problems in the generic drug market, which accounts for 90% of all drugs in the US.
Data presented at a Senate subcommittee hearing in March found drug shortages increased by nearly 30% between 2021 and 2022. The average shortage lasted a year and a half, which for somebody counting on those drugs is potentially a lifetime.
Now, the category of drugs that are currently experiencing shortages are pretty broad. So what gives? Why are patients who are suffering from literal cancer being told by their doctors and pharmacists that they simply don't have the drugs necessary to treat them properly? Are we supposed to be some beacon of free market capitalism that produces endless options for consumers and patients? Now, if you think that we're just dealing with a small and temporary hiccup in our supply chains due to COVID, like I did, you'd be wrong. This nonsense has been going on forever. The reality is any generic drug that requires something known as sterile processing is complicated and expensive to produce. That translates to smaller profit margins because, of course, generic drugs are sold at steep discounts compared to the name brand versions. And as we all know, when manufacturing decisions are left to private companies that need to turn a profit, the real losers are the patients.
Currently, 14 oncology drugs are on the FDA drug shortage list.
We have a whole team that's working night and day with the industry.
FDA Commissioner Robert Califf says drug shortages are getting worse because generic versions of the medicines have become so inexpensive to consumers. Producing them is no longer profitable for manufacturers, so many have stopped.
I like the framing there. I mean, the generic drugs have just become too inexpensive for the consumers. Great framing, okay. We'll get to possible solutions in a minute, but let me tell you some more details about this issue. Look, it's one of the reasons why we here in the United States tend to import drugs and even medical products from abroad instead of producing them here in America. But look, relying on lower paid workers in other countries to produce the drugs we need clearly has its own vulnerabilities.
Specific example recently was IV contrast materials, which is what is used to do radiologic studies. And one factory went down during COVID that was based in China, and that overnight cut the supply of this particular product in half, essentially meaning that half of the hospitals in the country, including veterans hospitals, did not have access to the necessary material to perform basic radiologic tests.
And as I mentioned earlier, this problem isn't new, and it's not like we haven't been here before. Americans were dealing with a dire prescription drug shortage a decade ago. And in 2014, the Government Accountability Office issued a report detailing the frequent cost and quality related problems that kept screwing with the production of life-saving medicines.
Sterile injectable drugs and generic drugs generally are very, very low margin drugs, so very, very small profit margin. So sometimes what happens is, a line goes down, something breaks down, and a company, a producer looks at the margins and looks at the economics and says, well, it's not really worth with the margins we're getting on this drug, continuing the line, putting the money in to fix it. So in effect, they let it go into shortage, and even if people need it, even if it's a critical drug, say for example the nitroglycerin in heart surgeries, it's just not, they don't produce it.
Isn't it incredible that we're dealing with the exact same shortage of sterile injectable drugs today? In over a decade, the federal government has done virtually nothing to mitigate this issue. Back in May, the House Energy and Commerce Oversight Subcommittee held a hearing with FDA Commissioner Robert Califf. Califf offered expert testimony on something Congress would be totally ignorant about had he not uttered this revelation. We have got to fix the core economics if we are going to get the situation fixed. Wow, groundbreaking. I'm glad Congress is aware of the issue now. So what, if anything, is the government doing in response to this insane crisis? Surprisingly, lawmakers are, having a tough time doing their job. And by surprisingly, I mean the opposite, totally unsurprising. Look, back in June, Politico reported on the ongoing gridlock that's standing in the way of legislation meant to resolve drug shortages, which is infuriating when one considers that there are as many as 14 different kinds of cancer-related drugs in short supply. I wish there was a little more attention on stories like this, by the way. I get it. I get that we're all obsessed with identity politics and the culture war, but there are people, literal cancer patients, who can't get their hands on cancer medication. But let's all get involved with, little drama stories that are taking place right now with streamers or whatever it is. It's so infuriating. But anyway, time is of the essence and literal lives are on the line. While the FDA cannot force a manufacturer to make a drug or even compel companies to notify the agency of surges in demand that they can't keep up with, the agency has decided to implement another solution.
Most recently, the FDA announced that it was going to allow a Chinese manufacturer to import one of the chemotherapy drugs that's been in shortage into the US. That drug has not been approved for use in the US, but in this case, they're going to allow an exception. They're looking at the possibility of doing that with some other drugs.
A lot of us are accustomed to taking a lot of generics for a lot of things, but you're talking about cancer treatments and antibiotics. Are there generic bridges or temporary solutions for people who need those types of medications?
So in this case, we've seen a lot of cancer doctors are saying that they have been looking to alternatives, but in some cases, they truly have been delaying care. And they say it could result in worse outcomes for patients. So they had to make this exception in order to start to improve the supply.
So we're going to import drugs from China that haven't been tested or approved by regulators in the US. And it's weird to hear the hawkish rhetoric toward China from the Biden administration while we continue to lean on them for our life-saving medication. And look, even if you're not worried about the safety of these imported drugs, you should be concerned that all that has happened so far is the placement of the tiniest possible Band-Aid on this broken system. This does nothing to prevent or mitigate drug shortages from occurring over and over again. Since the profit motive seems to be at the heart of this issue, maybe the federal government should step in and produce these generic drugs? Or what about subsidizing drug makers so they're, incentivized to manufacture the drugs we need to survive? For its part, all we've heard from the Biden White House is concern about China's dominance. A senior White House official said that lawmakers have raised concerns about Chinese dominance in this space and what that means for American interests when asked whether there is legislative appetite to subsidize generic manufacturing. Okay, so what exactly are they gonna do then? There obviously is no legislative appetite to do anything other than, well, whatever the hell this is.
Yes, Mr. Allen, did you or did you not decriminalize public urination in Washington, D.C.? Did you lead the charge to do so?
No, the revised criminal code left that as a criminal charge.
Did you lead the charge to decriminalize public urination in Washington, D.C.?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever vote in favor of decriminalizing public urination in Washington, D.C.?
The revised criminal code that was passed by the council
support
kept it as a criminal offense.
And you support this criminal?
I voted for it, yeah.
You voted to keep it as a criminal offense.
That's correct. The full council did.
We have records that show that you were in favor of removing that criminal offense and allowing public urination.
No,
Is that something that you intend to pursue in the future?
No, the legislation that you're referring to that came from the Criminal Code Reform Commission changed public urination from a criminal to a civil offense. The council then changed that to maintain it as a criminal offense at the request of the mayor.
Thank you, I yield.
Yeah, I'd be concerned about other countries dominating us. And countries like China will continue to dominate as long as our federal government refuses to invest in its people while prioritizing the financial interests of drug manufacturers. Allowing market forces to drive decisions about healthcare and pharmaceutical drugs clearly doesn't breed more options for patients. And no amount of showing admiration for free market capitalism can erase the damage being done to ordinary people who can't even access the cancer drugs they need to stay alive.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.